the beans like we used to do. Pass the beans. Pass the beans like we used to do. Pass the beans.
Pass the beans.
Pass the beans.
Pass the beans.
Pass the beans. The beans talk. Here we go, baby. Hey, Bean fam. We are back at you with another episode of The Beans Talk.
Yes.
The Beans Talk. We are four educators of color bringing you raw, authentic conversation about society, views, and community engagement. Everybody, I am FABS. Fabs.
And I'm Steph. I was just about to be looking, I'm STEF. Like,
That's what we doing now?
No. Yeah, go ahead.
And I'm RO.
And mine kind of goes already.
Yeah.
I'm TJ. So
yeah, that's pretty easy. But yeah, we are at another episode, and we are going to go ahead. This is part 2.
I'm amped.
This is part 2 of our two-part series.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, part dose. But yeah, we're going to jump right into the do now.
yeah, I have to do now this week, y'all. And my question is compelling and it's deep.
Oh, wow.
If you could be a vegetable, what would you be and why?
So we switched up to a vegetable.
Yep. I threw you a curveball. See, y'all.
Looky there.
if I could be a vegetable, what would I be?
Yep.
Wow.
I would be asparagus
Why, nigga?
because I make your
Because you're bitter.
Make your pee stink.
Ew.
I'm joking. No, I would be.
You're a mess, yeah.
Oh.
I would be
A vegetable.
asparagus because it's elevated and it's classy. And yeah, and it's good. I love asparagus. I love asparagus.
Asparagus is pretty tasty.
I'd be a potato,
Why?
just because it's my favorite vegetable.
Okay.
I didn't know potatoes are vegetables.
We're going to go with it and say that it is right now.
Potatoes aren't vegetables?
Potato.
Isn't it a starch? I don't know. I thought it was a starch. Maybe
You don't know what you're talking
The
about.
starch
I
can be a
feel like it's a
vegetable.
vegetable. Okay, I'll choose another one.
I mean, that could be.
I'd be
I don't think so.
spinach.
Why?
Because she had to
it's-
switch it.
It's good. I don't know. Spinach has a lot of nutrients in it anyway, and
Good for the soul.
it is
for the-
good for the soul.
So potato is considered a root vegetable.
Oh.
Thank you.
So I'd be a potato and spinach.
Good old Google.
I don't know what I would be.
Good old Google.
Lego.
You want me to go? I can go. I want to choose several different things, to be honest, but because no one really likes the first option.
It's okay, baby. It's not about everything.
Yeah, it's
You're
not
right.
about you.
I like beets.
You'd be
Shut
a beet.
the hell up, Fabiola. You know this whole time I'm thinking betterave.
Really?
Yes, I can't stand you.
You'd be a beet.
Yes.
I would be a beet.
A beet is beet.
I would be a beet.
I love bees.
Because when you touch me, I stain. And it's hard to wash me off.
That
That means that a
terrible.
piece of me will always be with you.
Oh
That's how
my
I feel.
gosh.
You know what I'm saying?
I'm
and
good at
sweet
washing
a little
beets
bit. The other option would have been an eggplant because freaking legume, y'all, if you ain't never tried it. Legume?
I said that.
I think you're more of an eggplant.
I don't even know what that means.
I think there's an underlying message there. I'm not sure.
Damn, I'm so upset you said beads.
No,
we
we
should
could be
something
there.
else.
Could be there
Because
together.
I was really thinking that. I'm just
Yeah.
thinking like I like that stain piece that you brought up, but I just like beets.
Beets are good.
And I used to rub them on my lips.
I didn't do
act
that.
Like
That's excessive.
I made it seem like I had lipstick on.
But you know they put beets
Thank you.
inside of like veggie meat
That was not a
to
good-
make it bleed a bit. That actually makes it, taste really good too. But anyway, but yeah, I would go with beets to be
Cool.
honest.
Me too.
Yeah, thank you for that interesting.
Wait, did Ro pick anything?
Beets.
She did, beets.
Beets.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. Because she
You're
just simply
welcome.
likes it. Thank you for
You're
that
welcome.
interesting do now.
It wasn't compelling.
Let's go ahead and
Yeah.
jump into round 2.
I know. So now we are back to our intense conversation around the criminalization of Black girls
Yeah.
in the U.S. Actually, I should just say period. I don't know.
Around the world,
Around
girl.
the world. So for those of you who did not tune into part 1 of this conversation,
Yet.
yes, go do your homework and go listen to that and then jump back to this episode. But we had a really good and rich conversation about Monique Morris's book and documentary film Pushout, the criminalization of Black girls in schools. And we talked a lot about the documentary itself and how certain quotes and information, pieces of information resonated with us. Just to give you a short context about what the work in the film is about. The book and the documentary underscores the challenges Black girls face with insight from experts across the country who have worked extensively in the fields of social justice, gender equality, and educational equity. And these experts give context to the crisis and provide a roadmap for how our educational system and those who interact with Black girls can provide a positive rather than punitive response to behaviors that are often misunderstood or misrepresented. So the second piece of the conversation, we're going to get into a little bit of the debate around how Black girls' experiences are currently, mostly in the U.S., because that's where we are. And there was an interview that Monique Morris did with The Atlantic, and I was just curious. I know you guys read that interview. I was curious about what things stuck out to you inside that interview. How you think it might have tied to our conversation from the first time, and then we'll get more into the deep discussion or debate around how we think we can start addressing some of these larger issues around the treatment of Black girls.
I know for me, something that I made sure to add in my note after you sent it out to us, Steph, baby, was that Monique said it. So young women are often mischaracterized and mislabeled because of how they look, dress, speak, and act. Basically, in short, Black girls are devalued based on how others perceive them. I was like, that's so true.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
It's so true. We immediately look at a Black girl completely differently based on what she wears. I'm just thinking, there have been times where I've had to catch myself. I'll see a white student wear a bodycon skirt from Forever 21 and be like, oh, okay, she looks so tasteful in it. It's fun. It's not inappropriate. But then when I see when I see a more voluptuous Black student, one who has more body wearing that same skirt, I've caught myself wanting to go have a little conversation where to be like, yo, sweet thing, put something else on. And I'm just like, damn, even people of color are mischaracterizing.
Right. What's driving you to say that?
Yeah. Shit.
Yeah, you saw that with the, I don't know if you guys remember this a couple years ago, the whole teacher bay epidemic.
Oh,
yeah.
There was this Black teacher in Georgia. I don't know if I think she taught elementary school, but they called her and made her teacher bay. I'll see if I can find a link, guys, and provide it so you guys can go see an article or something.
Stacked.
She was a lot thicker. And then there was a conversation about you shouldn't be wearing that around kids, and there was that discussion that you brought up. What would be saying the same thing if we saw a white person or somebody who did not have these curves? Would that still be the same discussion? So that's an example I remember.
Yeah. One of the parts that actually stuck out to me inside of the interview is she referenced an African proverb, I think she did. And
lion, right?
Yeah, it says, until the lions have their own historian, the story of the hunt will always glorify the hunter. Yeah. So basically, we're looking through the view of somebody else and how their perception of the stories. And obviously we're going to go with that story instead, because that's really the only story that we have. That's the only story that we actually know. So until more books like this, like Pushout and maybe other ones that I'm not familiar with, and if anybody has any recommendations, please drop them down below.
Thank you.
Would love to read them. But it's until we're able to push out more stories about from our own perspective, and how we're able to define that for other people, we have other people defining that for us. And so we have no choice but to go with,
Their flow.
and what they believe is right or wrong and acceptable or unacceptable,
Yeah, no, I like that quote a lot. It stood out to me too.
Yeah.
And I don't think you read the whole thing. I think you intentionally read the first part, but it also goes on and says that, talks about and then there's other people that are affected by, the that are outside. And that is also important too.
Yeah, that's true.
I just think about the part where she talks about black girls being exploited, and it just relates to my point back to our part one of our conversation about who's doing the exploitation and what is the solution. Because again, I'm glad that Monique, her name is Monique, right?
Yeah.
Brings this to light into our attention, but I'm thinking what is what can we do to make this not to combat this issue? And of course we were talking about more teachers in the classroom. We said that but black people are not applying to be a teacher. So then how can we, what ways can we make sure that we diffuse or kind of stop this sort of exploitation or this this detrimental mentality toward black girls. And that's a very hard question to come up with an answer to. But
I feel like we kind of touched on that on the last episode. The ways to start to break that down is by allowing us to tell our own story and not mute us with stories that you want to put out there that you think people would be most interested in, or how you want to drive society in a particular way, or how you want a group of people to actually act. The way to do that is to have black people owning their music and black people or black women and stuff like that, putting out their own music about their experiences. And it's not just about money and shaking ass and stuff like that. Let's talk about some other stuff as well. That's let's talk about our traumas. You know what I mean? Why are we acting the way that we're acting now? What are some things inside of our community that are so taboo to speak about or are ignored because of protecting other people? And a lot of times might even be our black men. You know what I mean? What other things are we actually touching on? And why don't we bring that into music? Why don't we bring more of that into, they're already in books, but apparently people aren't reading. So that's another thing. People need to read as well.
Yeah. And I think to that proverb, the point is, how do we, because I believe there are so many talented people out there and so many educated people out there already writing these stories. How do we get it to a point where they are elevated? Because I think that's the problem. It's these conversations exist, but they're not being put in the forefront for us to hear. Just like with this Pushout book, if we wouldn't have had these the film screenings,
never heard of it, y'all.
The free film screenings, that they were doing.
Do you think people want to hear this? Young people or people do you think people want to hear? Because I don't know.
Because it's not mainstream. That's not what's popular.
But what? I mean, that's a problem. I feel if we were to put if kids or young people they want to hear the ratchetness. They want to hear that. And it's bizarre because we're saying that, hey, that kind of stuff enforces a stereotype. It enforces, a negative perception. But
I don't think we should limit just people in general to being geared towards one thing or the other. Like me, I know I like to have my feet in a whole bunch of different stuff as an individual.
I do too.
There are times when I like my ratchet. There are times when I like my intellectual conversation. So just me as an individual, I like a bunch of different things. And I do think that if we start to engage, I think young people want to be involved inside these conversations. The screening that we went to, there was a senior student who went to
amazing. Couple students.
Yeah, there were a couple students who were on the panel, and just to hear their passion around this issue and to hear their perspective was enlightening. So I think if we give young people the agency to get involved inside of their own experiences, they'll take it. Like everybody wants to have a chance to write their own story or say something about it. I don't know if you guys have heard anything about the issues that's been going on in Cambridge for
What's happening?
the past like month or so. Like year. I feel like this has been going on for like 7-8 months. But in short, there was this educator at one of the schools at Cambridge Public Schools who had invited in, there was a project that was being done around like the N-word and other like racially derogatory words. And so there was a panel that was involved. And so he invited like, actually, I don't know. I think the teacher was a he. Well, this teacher invited a panel to come in and engage with the students around this particular project. And there was a board, a school committee member who was a part of that panel, who was white, and they were reading from, I think, the text itself, and they said the whole word. They said the N-word out, and everybody else was referring to it as like N-word, or, you know, not like saying the full word, but this white committee member had said the full word. And so the students were like very outraged, and they were like protesting and like asking for this committee member to pretty much be kicked off the school committee board. And so there was like this whole series of, this is opening up. I don't want to get deep into this, but this is, because the point I'm trying to prove is that kids want to be involved inside. Like they recognize some of the social issues going on and they want to be involved. And so, long story short, the committee member, there were no like rules or guidelines in place if like a committee member were to like step over a certain boundary, that they would get removed. So there was no disciplinary thing in place. So the committee board member like stayed inside that position, and the kids are now still like fighting and trying to figure out like, what can we do to like get something in place where this doesn't happen again? Because if this was an educator who said something like this, then their job would be up for discussion.
I think, I definitely agree with you in the fact that a lot of students definitely want to be a part of the conversation. And I think maybe at some point we'll probably dive into that particular story, maybe as a debate as to whether or not that was okay. That's interesting to hear about. But, you know, like just focusing a little bit more on the students, I agree. Like they do want to advocate. I remember I just spoke about this, I believe, at the last episode as well. I was talking about a particular student, but I actually started a small program for young girls, and they're pretty much all the girls that we were serving at that particular school were girls of color. And so it was an opportunity for them to express themselves and talk about their situations and build a level of sisterhood and foster leadership and all that stuff there at that school. Yeah, it was pretty dope. And it was nice to see people step up and become a part of several discussions. Like they were talking about certain traumas and being able to face that. It encouraged other people to bring their voice to the table and talk about their traumas. And it did foster a level of sisterhood. And you saw that there was a shift and a change in the dynamics on how they were going to be treating each other. Like it were a lot less arguments and fights and stuff like that. And so, you know, those are the different things that I think we as educators, and I mean like just to be able to make that shift, to make that change. It's on us to really make that happen. I don't know if that means like nonprofits. I don't know if that means like as teachers to set up certain programs inside of schools or whatever it might be, however that might look. I think that's really where it becomes the most important, bringing people who are healed and making them educators and putting them in front of young students and allowing them to find a way and a path for them to heal as well and give them that opportunity, because what they're being fed doesn't give them that opportunity. It drowns it out. You know what I mean? It's like it really
and that's what you're saying, right? TJ?
Yeah, and it's frustrating. It really is, because you're never ever actually able to face these demons. You know what I mean? You're actually being encouraged to like embrace certain things that happen to you, and then like you start to, I don't know, become it. And now you're the next girl twerking or making songs about twerking. And so not to say, listen, twerking is timeless. I'm not going to say that, you know, that's its own form of art, but I'm saying that's not that's not all that there is. You know what I mean? There's like, you know what I mean? Like there's so much to what you can be, that I don't want us to say that because they're kids that they don't have a voice, and they don't really care about it. Another thing, really quick story. Another time when I was in high school, a group of us actually advocated for ourselves, and we went on strike, like as a group. And there was probably just like one student. His name was Ken. There was like one student who didn't actually protest against like some of the treatments that we were receiving, and we didn't like it. I can't really remember exactly what it was. I don't know if it was like hours or something like that. But the fact of the matter is we do, or I say we because I'm thinking of myself, but children and students, young people do actually want their voice to be heard. We just drown it out as if it's irrelevant. But
very quickly, shout out to the existing organizations and nonprofits that are out there doing this very important work for young girls, especially in Boston. Shout out to Love Your Magic, which is one of those organizations who put on these free film screenings for Pushout. So Love Your Magic, you guys check them out, follow them, show them some love, because they are an organization right now trying to do something really positive for Black girls.
And really quickly, if you know any other ones, just go ahead and drop them down below, because we would love to have them on the show and just talk a little bit more about that. But I think it's really important for us to allow them to have that space, and it's up to us to give them that space so that they understand that their voice is actually welcomed and that it's not irrelevant. It's them that's actually driving the future. It's them that's driving everything that's to come, and it's important that they are able to speak up about it. You know what I mean?
And I think just recognizing that, again, that intersectionality of being Black and being a woman. Like, we've sat and we've had like hour-long discussions about just women in general and how women have been exploited. And then we've sat and we've had our conversation about racism and Black people. And so you put the two of those things together, it's a lot on a person's experience. And so, you know, again, just really elevating that intersectionality and thinking about ways in which we as educators can help support our young Black girls just being the individuals that they are. Like, you're all different. You're all worthy. You're all valuable. You all mean something. Like, you don't have to fit into anybody's box. We're cultivating, like, who are you at the root? What's your soul? What's your spirit?
There was that poet. She was a student. Was she a senior or a freshman in college? I can't remember, but she was a poet.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. But she was. If I can remember her tag, I'll drop it inside of the comments as well. But she pointed out like a Black girl or Black woman's activism tends to be drowned out by like. Or if it's like I think it's like Black girl magic tends to be drowned out by like Black boy joy or something like that. I think that was something that she pointed out.
I'm not catching it yet either.
I think it just goes to show that there are often times where the Black girl magic's voice might be overshadowed by Black boy joy, and it's not to say that they both don't have a place at the table. They do. And I think what she was basically pointing out was that oftentimes, even us as Black women, what we do is revere Black men, which we should do. It's not to say that we shouldn't or anything like that. But we should also be getting the same thing in return. And we don't always get the same thing in return. And you could see that even like as it comes to media. It's not even until more recently where Black women who have been like arrested for stupid charges and stuff like that, where it's like now that's coming to the limelight, but that's been going on like for a very long time. Like that's been highlighted for Black men for a very long time. And you didn't really see that for Black women, but they were also experiencing the same thing. It's like something like that. It's like both of these things are at the table. And it's important to make sure that we recognize the two experiences while yes, that they both fall under this umbrella of being Black, but they're still being a Black man. And then there's still that other aspect where it's like being a Black woman, and that shouldn't just be like ignored. You know what I mean? It has its place at the table as its own identity and should be addressed as such.
I think Monique also says that was a really big motivation for her doing this work and on Pushout is to give some type of exposure and voice to what's happening to Black girls as well, because, you know, a lot of the media coverage is talking about the attack on Black men,
and a lot
which
of
is also very
too.
urgent as well. But we also have like again, like Fabiola said, Black women also experiencing that.
Yeah. And I appreciate that about this film and the book. You know, bringing it to light is really important. And I wasn't trying to say that like, oh, you know, I just think it's a very, when I just think about how to combat it, it's just kind of overwhelming to think about. But I think small steps are really important. And I think if you are an educator of color in the classroom, like just really trying to create a space where students are comfortable, just like Fabiola said, in talking about their truth and talking about their trauma and just being empathetic and showing compassion to Black girls. Absolutely. Because I think it's important. So, but
yeah, they should be given that opportunity for sure.
Yeah, it starts with these like small conversations about it. And it starts with Monique writing this piece of art, man. Like this is where it begins. But yeah, TJ, I'm with you. Like all this long talking about it, what are we doing about it?
Yeah. Exactly.
And we got to do something about it.
And it definitely feels like it's an uphill battle because there are powers that be that are bigger than we are.
Fuck the powers.
So I think of like, okay, like, so when I say like, well, why aren't like white people own the music industry pretty much, and they own these schools and all this other stuff. So how can we get ourselves, like, how can we be the front runners in these in these powers and organizations? That's really how it's gonna end.
Gotta get it. Yeah.
And that's hard. That's a really hard, like a difficult thing to come up with a solution towards. So
one of the things that Ayanna Presley had said, she said, we need an equitable outrage. So people need to be just as angry for like other things that are going on for these young Black girls as well, so that change could really happen. It's the only time that change really happens until it's like recognized and it's out there inside of people's faces. It's going to be really difficult for people to even hear it. You know what I mean? Right now there's a lot of whispers going on. I feel like now, like, maybe the volume is getting turned up for some folk and people are listening. So I like the fact that she pointed that out. But yeah, that was deep. I love that. I love that conversation. Absolutely love that conversation. Part two
still go on.
It really could.
It could still go on. Please continue this conversation in your circles.
If you have any questions or anything like that you want us to maybe address or anything like that, please feel free to pop in. But right now we're going to jump into the word of the day. And I feel like this really ties into the conversation that we had, and the word of the day is: if you don't have a seat at the table, bring your own chair.
Shit.
Okay. So you better slide that joint up, make it loud, make it scrape the floor, okay? And let them know that you're coming up to that table so that you can go ahead and let your voice be heard.
I know that kind of links to what TJ was saying. Like, we have to insert ourselves inside these roles and positions and step up.
Yep. And that's where the greatest change is going to be. Yep. If your voice is not at that table, you find a way to make it so that it is at that table. Because that representation matters, man.
It does.
You know what I mean? That's the only way that change is going to happen. It's the only way that, I don't know, whoever you represent is actually going to be heard. It's the only way that's going to work. But yeah, that's another episode of the Beanstalk. We're going to jump into homework.
Homework, guys. Yes. Follow us. Follow on Instagram. The Beanstalk. The Beanstalk Podcast. Hit that link in bio. Check us out. Leave us some comments, likes if you enjoyed this conversation. And again, keep this conversation going in your own communities, because our Black girls, our Black babies in general, they need love. They need our love. They need our support. And they need our healing most of all. So get in this conversation, guys. We love you.
We do.
Holla, holla.
Holla, holla.
Peace.
$4.
Yeah. If you're an educator, make sure you grab that book, Pushout.
Yes.
I need to get that.
Grab that book. Grab that book.
I need to get that.
All right, we out.
Deuces.
Wow.
Hey!